Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session of Fix and Flip DMV. My name is Cherie of Simply Funded. We are a hard money lender in the Metro DC area. So if you need any money with regards to your fix and flips, to purchase property, cash out, refinance, we hope that you will give us a shout out and let us see if we are able to serve you. So it's simplyfunded.com, or you can also find us at getfundedsimply.com. That may be a little bit easier for you to type in and remember. So we have our guest here, Rob Chevez, who is an experienced rehabber. And the point of these sessions is to give anybody who is either new or you can be experienced, but you just want to get some extra tools and tips and tricks to be able to actually come together and talk about how to actually find a property, fund it, fix it, and either finance it to do the BRRRR strategy or to actually flip that property. So Rob has a lot of experience. And the first question I'll ask you is, how much experience do you have? How did you even get into real estate?
Oh boy. Let's see. Late night infomercial, Carlton Sheets.
Knew you were going to say that. Carlton
Really?
Sheets. I remember because that was the only infomercial I ever remembered seeing was Carlton Sheets. So
Carlton Sheets.
some
I
of the
mean,
young people may not even know
they
who
don't
that
know. That's
is.
old school, right? That's old school. And I think I was in college and either recently graduated from college or was in college, and I ordered it. I'd never ordered anything late night, right? And that was the first, you know, bit of information, I would say, that got me thinking about it. I started a recruiting business pretty much right out of college with my best friend, and real estate was a vehicle that I would, that business is like an active income business. So I would, place somebody, make money, and then I would buy rentals. And I, bought one at a time, and I attended RIAs. And for those that don't know what a RIA is, a real estate investment association. And I just was a consumer of information, right? Now, the type of information you need to get back then is a lot different than the information you can get now, right? Like information is everywhere. You go on YouTube, but then, you had to order something like Carlton Sheets. You had to read books. Oh, God forbid, you had to read books, right? And so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Rich Dad Poor Dad, like so many other investors, that started getting me thinking differently about the game and the game that we're actually playing. And so in 2005, I sold my portion of the business back to my partner, my business partner in that recruiting business. And my wife and I decided to do this thing full time, right? Just dive in without a plan, without a mentor, without anything, right? But with a belief that we could do it, a belief that we would find a way. Looking back, I'm like, man, it was so foolish. And yet also inspiring, right? That you're just gonna be like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. And we had just bought a house in McLean. I had a little baby girl. It wasn't the best time. I had a lot of responsibility, but something in my gut, my intuition said, this is your path. And so that year, really from 2005 to 2006, and right, we're talking about the height of the market, right? I went to a sub-market and just started buying rentals in that market. And there were small multifamily properties, and I would buy them. I would fix them up. I would put tenants into them and then sell them turnkey to investors. And that's where I really learned the game, to be honest with you. Like, that's where I learned the game, right? I learned the game on how to market for deals, how to negotiate the deals at the kitchen table, what to say, what not to say, and how to finance them, how to raise the capital, like all of it. And, while owning rentals in that market has not been the best return for me, right, over time, lots of mistakes there, playing the game and learning the game has been an unbelievable return for me, right? Return on knowledge has been invaluable. And so that's how I started.
Yeah, you mentioned a great point, is that so many of us think when we're getting started in this that we're going to end up with $100,000 deal immediately. Like, we're going to flip this and we're going to make like a gazillion dollars. And even in my journey, I've, started off with $1,500 checks, $2,000 checks. Now I was just doing wholesaling and not rehabbing at the time, but the incredible amount that you learn during that period is amazing. And I think that it's important for us to celebrate the small wins
Oh yeah.
when we're early on and not necessarily look at it as, oh, I only made $1,000. It's like, no, you made $1,000. Think about how many people work a full week and don't make that kind of money,
Yeah, it really is the best investment that you're making at that time is actually the investment in yourself,
Yes.
right? It's the investment in knowledge and the investment in understanding that you can replicate this and that there's another way to make money, right? It's the entrepreneurial journey, which is so cool.
So then let's help the audience kind of get some tips and tools and resources and things like that. So the point of today's conversation is to kind of go through, how do we find these properties? How do we fund them? How do we fix them? And then how do we flip or refinance them? So let's take the first step.
Sure.
Find. Give
Fine.
the audience some ideas of how do you actually find these properties and negotiate them and get them under contract?
Sure. I'll tell you, I'll give you my playbook, right? Here's my playbook.
Everybody take good notes.
Yeah, it's not complicated, right? Simple is how things scale. Simple is how things actually get accomplished. But it has to do with focus, and I call it zoning a market. You can call it niching a market, right? I call it zone because it's an acronym that means something to me. It keeps me on track. But it's essentially zeroing in on the area that you want to work in, right? And that's incredibly important because when you zero in on a target market, you get to understand value. And understanding value makes you a competitive weapon in the marketplace. So most people that will be watching this will have a general idea of what something in their neighborhood is valued at, right? They'll have a general idea of what their house is worth, or they'll have a general idea of what rents are in the area and in the community. And that's how it starts. You have to understand value. And it's really hard to understand value if you're looking at properties in Bowie and Reston and DC and Front Royal and Winchester and Arlington and Falls Church, right? Which is what most investors, like new investors, do. They split their time, they split their focus because they're trying to figure out this, like, oh, is it better to market here or there? And what I will tell you is in every area, whether it's Arlington or Winchester or Falls Church or Alexandria, wherever, doesn't matter. There are properties that will fit your criteria, right? But it comes down to focusing first and foremost, right? So that's number one. Number two is you need to have a message that's going to appeal to that avatar in that area. So the message is fairly simple. I remember when I was just starting out being like, what's the message? What's the letter look like? What's the postcard look like? They're out there. You could Google, postcard for investors to send to absentee owners, or postcard for investors to send to probate properties, right? You'll find simple, and you'll find letters, or you'll find postcards. And the message is very simple, right? It is, I will buy your house, cash, and as is condition, and close at a time that's convenient for you. That's it. right?
Keep it super simple.
Simple, right? If it's too long, people won't read it. And so you have to have that message. Now, the second mistake that people have, well, a mistake, let's just say a mistake that people make, is that they will try a piece of marketing once or twice, and then if it doesn't work, they stop, right? And so when you decide that you're going to market for properties, and by the way, I'm gonna go back to my zone method to keep us honest, right, on that. When you're in the zone section, and you've picked an area that you know you want to market to, you have to think what kind of branding might resonate in this market. So for example, Arlington message of We Buy Houses might be slightly different because it's a more affluent area. So instead of saying We Buy Houses, you might say Property Wanted, right? And I remember a good friend of mine who was a builder, that was his message, Property Wanted. I remember thinking, oh, that little nuance,
That's really understanding the avatar, like you
yeah,
said.
it's understanding it was really, really important, right? And am I going to do bandit signs in Arlington? Probably not, right? Like the avatar is not going to respond to that. But will bandit signs work in Baltimore? Yes, right? Or in Front Royal? Yes, right? So you need to understand your audience. So when you're zeroing in on your target market, you need to understand what is culturally acceptable in that market, and who are you talking to, and what should that simple message sound like that's just nuanced a little bit, right? So that's important. And then you have to figure out within that target market, within the geographic market that you want to understand, what is the psychographic market that you want to attack? Meaning, will you go after pre-foreclosures, or will you go after absentee owners? Or will you go after probate and estates? Or will you go after expireds, right, and withdrawals? And why those targets? Because they're typically some type of motivation that's there, or there could be, right? And so you have to understand the area that you want to go after, and then the psychological, psychographic avatar, right, that you want to target. So a landlord's going to have different needs than somebody that's in pre-foreclosure. Now, the mistake everybody makes is that they'll do a little pre-foreclosure marketing, they'll do a little they'll do a little landlord marketing, they'll do a little right, and nothing. There's no synergy that happens. You got to choose one.
Be a
Choose one area.
specialist.
That's
Yeah.
right. Choose one area, and then choose one, and then dominate that message. And then you've earned the right to go to the next message once you nail that one message.
I like that because the analogy that I will give is being a doctor. You could be a general practitioner, but you're going to make less money than if you're a cardiologist or you're an anesthesiologist or you're, super specialized in one thing. And then if you say, for example, you're going to focus on foreclosures in the Front Royal area, well, you really know the market, but you also really know the laws around foreclosures and
Sure.
what banks will, work with you and which ones won't, and all of those things. So I really like that as an idea that you're giving people. Now,
Go ahead.
some people may be concerned that there is not an abundance of opportunity in the area that they're choosing, either geographically or with regards to the motivation of the seller. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really big fear that people have. So what they do is that they try to be everything to everybody by being the generalist, and their message gets lost and diluted. And so they never get any traction, right? By focusing your message, essentially you become kind of like that red light, right, that everybody sees, or the people that need that service see. And so you actually attract people to you, right? So by cutting and eliminating, you're actually attracting, right? And it is so counterintuitive. I see it in business all the time. Agents make that mistake all the time, right? Investors make that mistake all the time. So just imagine this, it's how the reticular activation system works in your brain. If you go to a real estate investment association meeting or a grid meeting, right? And you say, hi, my name is Cherie, and I'm a wholesaler, right? People will be like, oh, okay, cool. But if you're like, my name is Cherie, and I'm a wholesaler in Reston, I'm a wholesaler in Fairfax County, people, for whatever reason, remember that better. They're like, oh yeah. There was like when when something comes across their desk, they're like, oh, there was that one person that specializes in Fairfax County I need to get in touch with, right? And so by eliminating, you actually become anchored in people's minds because they remember you as the specialist in that particular area, right? It's very counterintuitive. We've built multiple companies using this strategy, and it's by going deeper, right? It's by going deeper. Now, let's take a step back to when you want to own the mind share of a market and zone, there's only 3 ways to do it. There's only 3 ways to generate business: prospecting, networking, and marketing. Those are the 3 ways, right? And I normally go in that order: prospecting, networking, marketing, because prospecting is low cost. It takes your time. In the beginning, you don't have money, right? So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to do an activity that has a high return, but doesn't cost you a lot of money. It's not super scalable when because marketing is scalable, but it costs money. You can scale prospecting, but now that becomes marketing again, expensive, by hiring lots of, inside salespeople. But when you're first getting started, you are the economic engine. So you got to pick up that phone, you have to have a script, and you need to make calls, right? And that scares the hell out of people. So sometimes people just avoid that altogether. And you don't need to do that. But it is a very cost-effective way to do it. And guess what? Not a lot of people do it, which separates you from everybody else, right? The second way is the network, which is kind of a low, it's not as scary for people, right, to go out and network. But it takes longer to build that because you got to build a big database, and put lots of people in the database. So it's indirect, but it works. And then marketing is very direct with a good message, and people will call you, but it costs you money. So if you're going to market, you have to live with a budget that you can say, you know what? You have to look at it as an investment. I'm going to spend $500 a month for the next 12 to 24 months. I'm just going to set it and forget it. And so you can do a combination of these things, right? That's what I did. Like I called, I networked, and I marketed because I was like, I'm all in, right? I'm completely all in. But I had to find a budget that I could live with. And I needed to create a message with my marketing that made people go, huh, okay, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him. So that's the gist of how you find them. Not complicated, but it takes discipline, consistency, right? Every single day. And it takes focus, like in an area. And you have to understand values, because here's the deal. You start marketing, but if you don't understand value, you're in trouble if somebody calls you because you don't know what the value of that property potentially is. So what I would recommend people do is a very easy strategy in the beginning. And this is whenever I enter into a market, this is what I do, is that I just drive around and look, they call it driving for dollars, right? I drive around and I look at real estate and I understand value, and I'm looking for properties that look like they need some work from the outside. There's some distress, and I start building a list of those properties. But above and beyond building that list, I'm just learning the market. Hey, why did this one sell for that price and that one sold for this price, right? And what are the rents for that one compared to this one? What are the nuances and what's the difference? And why does that street sell for more compared to this street? And then I start talking to people in that market, Hey, where do you recommend I'm buying? What do you do? What have you purchased? Which is why it's important to go get like in the area or have somebody get in the area for you to give you the intelligence of that market. Does that
Yeah, I
make
was going
sense?
to ask you, do you suggest some people consider working with a realtor who specializes in working with investors in order to kind of help them get some of the answers to those questions about the valuations?
100%, 100%, right? Like you need to build a team of people around you, right? The team is going to be agents, other investors, lenders, contractors, property managers, right? You need a team of people around you so that you can execute these things at a high level. So we do a whole training on building your dream team because you need a dream team, right? But you can't rely on the contractor. You can't rely on the agent. You can't rely on the lender, meaning you need to be empowered with this information yourself,
Mhm.
right? You're going to use their information in the beginning to gain knowledge and to learn, but you got to learn this. You can't trust. It's trust and verify, right? Trust and verify, which means you need access to data, okay, in order to do this. So I always encourage people, if they're just starting out, that they may want to consider getting their license as well, right? So that they can get access to the MLS. Why? Because that is the purest data out there. Now, you can get services that will give you some of that data, but you can't rely on Redfin and Zillow to figure out value, which a lot of people do. And if you get it 5 or 10% wrong, you're in trouble, right? So
Especially 5 or 10% the wrong way.
that's right. That's
If it
right.
goes up 5 or 10%, you're fine. But then let's move to the finance or the funding, because a lot of people will say, I'm scared to get in the game because I don't know where the money is going to come from. Talk to us a little bit about your process of funding deals.
Sure. I'll share a story because I believe that people learn through stories, right? What typically holds people back is they think to themselves, well, I don't have the money, so I can't invest. And that is simply just a lie that they're telling themselves. It's that nobody's really educated them. That if you have the deal, you actually determine the rules, right? The person that controls the asset controls the rules. So in the beginning, what I did was I partnered with somebody that had the money. I found the deals and they had the money. This game is all about speed, right? This is why it's important for you to learn your market and know that market. Because if a deal comes up quickly that needs a lot of work, or it might be going into foreclosure, or they need a solution that's fast, you need access to fast capital, right? So one way to get access to fast capital is to have a partner that has the capital. And you can create a 50-50 type of relationship with them. I find them, you fund them, right? And then we split everything 50-50. So in the beginning, I did that, right? They put up all the money, I put up all the hustle, okay? But eventually I realized, well, that was really expensive money. Like 50-50 is great, but it's also very expensive money. You can go to hard money lenders or private lenders out there that essentially will give you 65 to 70% of the money that you need. You just have to have the remaining balance to do the renovation, right? In that equation, or to do the BRRRR strategy in that equation, right? And that's, while it seems expensive, right? At first glance, you might be like a 12-2 or 13-3, depending on your level of experience, right? Or 11-1, whatever it is, right? Depending on level of experience, depending on your track record. That might seem expensive, but it's always short-term money. It is less expensive than having a 50-50 partner, right? And people don't always realize that in the beginning. So there are hard money lenders, private lenders that are out there that are designed to provide you this kind of money, short-term money that you're going to then use to get a higher rate of return on, right? You're either going to buy it, fix it, flip it, right? Or you're going to, like you said, burr out of it, right?
Right.
Buy, renovate, rent, rinse, repeat. Who knows? I always forget what it stands for, right? But
Buy, rehab, oh my goodness.
rent,
Rent,
refinance, repeat. There
refinance,
we
and
go.
repeat.
There we go.
Exactly.
That's
I
it.
should know this as well. Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because we did it back in the day and nobody, it was, you know, we didn't call it burr. We
And
just
it,
called
yeah,
it, it's just a
somebody
cash,
thought,
it
yeah,
was
the
just a cash
acronym.
out refi.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? But that was
Yes.
good marketing on their part, right? So partners, hard money lenders, and then there are different types of traditional financing out there, like 2 or 3K loans and all the rest. The issue with those is that they take too long.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to solve somebody's need quickly, you need to go to a partner or a hard money lender, private lender, in order to access capital quickly.
Right. So if you want to be able to say, just anybody listening, if you want to be able to say we close in 10 days, that is where a hard money lender or private lender like us comes in, because we are able to do that. The other great thing about coming to somebody like us versus traditional financing is that it goes on your credit report if you're doing traditional financing. We check your credit. However, because we want to make sure that you are credit worthy, but we don't put the loan on your credit report. So you are also able to purchase those properties in an LLC versus with a lot of traditional funding, they won't loan to you unless you purchase in your personal name and then you convert it to an LLC or a trust or whatever. So there are some benefits to funding through private money. So
Oh yeah, it's, you know, the difference is one is a business, right? You got to look at that as like it's a business and you got to run it like a business and you get the protections of a business and you get the benefits of a business. And one is, you know, you're putting it on your balance sheet essentially, and you know, it does go on your credit, right? Now, you're liable for both, right? You're liable for both. At the end of the day, you're liable for both. But people are always like, how do you own that many properties? Well, it's because there's commercial loans on those properties.
Yes.
Right? And they're viewed differently than a traditional loan. Now, your best rates are going to be on traditional financing. They just are. And you have the ability to buy up to 10 in your name, right?
Yes.
But many times it's difficult to get traditional financing when you're moving quickly. So what you would do is you could buy them cash through a private lender or hard money lender, right? Or a partner. And then you could burr them into traditional financing, right? And that's what I did in 2008. I did that in 2008, 2009. Now we're just buying simply in the name of the LLC. And then we're refinancing, again, staying in the name of that LLC. But the rates are higher. I just have too many on my current credit report in order to do that. And honestly, like, it just takes a lot of time, right? As a business owner with multiple businesses, getting a loan, traditional loan, Fannie Freddie loan, is so painful.
Yes, like 60 days. It's a lot of paperwork and
it's all the paperwork. It's so painful. It's so painful.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So the final thing, just a final plug for Simply Funded, is we also offer pre-approval letters. So, you will still need to, once we give you the pre-approval letter and you get your contract, you'll still need to go through our underwriting process. But we've had, I think I've done like 5 or 6 pre-approval letters over the past month or so for investors. And oftentimes it makes your seller feel more comfortable that you have the financial backing to actually close. So that's the end of my plugging for now. Let's move to the fix, the renovation,
Sure.
because this is the area where when you're dealing with contractors, you can make or break your budget,
Oh yeah.
your um, ability to have profits, etc.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about like how you work with contractors, how you estimate your renovation costs, everything that goes into that part of your process.
So there's a couple things. Do your homework and do your due diligence. Even as an experienced person, sometimes I've made the mistake of cutting corners, and like cutting corners always comes back and bites you in the butt. So what do I mean by cutting corners? One, you can go to the DPOR website and make sure that the person that you're hiring is actually licensed to do the type of work that you want them licensed to do, right? So DPOR, you just put in the name and they will tell you. And they'll also tell you if there's any claims against them, right? Bad behavior that's there. So go there, do your homework, right? That's important. Reviews, then go look at the reviews. So I had a situation recently, like, guys, reviews bad, right? But he was such a likable guy, and he had no filed complaints against him, and he had the proper insurance. That was the other thing that I checked. He had the proper insurance, but guy, he's just slow, just took forever. Now the work was good, but it just took forever. Okay. The problem is time is money in our business.
That's what I was thinking.
Time is money. And so something that should have taken 3 months took 9 months. Crazy, right? Crazy. And they'll give you every excuse under the sun. Weather, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too blah, 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 right? So the best way is to get referrals from people in the local area, of people that have performed, right? That's part of it. So when it comes to choosing a contractor, sometimes you get seduced by the bids, right? And you're like, wow, this one is really a lot less expensive than this one, right? Let's just say one is 80,000, the other one's 100,000, right? Like that's 20%, but like that's $20,000. That's a lot, right? But this person's reviews are like, not that great, right? But you're like, oh, but it's 20,000 less. This person's reviews are awesome. They nail it. Or everything, everybody's rants and raves about them. But you decide to go with this person, right? Because it looks cheaper on the front end. But what happens is over time, you realize that they do it wrong. They don't do it right. They take too long. And at the end of the day, it's like this, where you thought was going to cost you $80,000 because of the time that was spent on that project and like stuff going wrong and them not living up to their word, it now costs you 120, right? And the one at 100 would have been so much better, so much more affordable, right? And so when working with you have to understand that game, right? The other piece is we have spreadsheets that maybe anybody that's signed up for this that we've created that calculates a per square foot cost for the different types of renovations that we do here in kind of like the DMV area. Mark Beckett, my business partner, developed this and is always updating it and refining it. It's the tool that we use to estimate renovations. It's really, really important, right? So it's our estimating renovation sheet. Now that only works for the DMV area, right? Because if you take that to Ohio, pricing is different and all the rest. So you have to start, as you start building this, you have to figure out what the cost is in your market. And you need to build a spreadsheet specific to your market, right? Pricing in New York's different than pricing in Florida. That's how
That's
it
right.
is.
That's right. I mean, it's totally different. So, we do also within our organization, within Simply Funded, is we have a couple of contractors that we can refer to people as well. So that way, if you're looking for some trusted and vetted organizations, then we have a couple that we are able to send to you and give to you, because ultimately we want you to be successful. And even from a lending point of view, we know that people get caught up in the construction. So we want the construction to go well as well. We want to make sure from a hard money point of view that if it's supposed to take 3 months for you to rehab it, that it takes 3 months so that you can.
That's where everybody messes up, Cherie,
Yeah.
right? It's the construction. That's
Yeah.
the place where it goes off the rails.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes, like you said, Rob, it's better for you to take the $100,000 bid, know it's going to be done in 3 months, and then you make, for example, the summer season when people are buying, at the height of the market, versus
Oh yeah.
playing with somebody who is going to take longer, and yeah, your property is not going to be ready at the time period that you're looking for.
What I will also say, Cherie, a common mistake that people make is that they don't pull permits. Okay. They
Talk
cut
about that.
corners,
Yes.
right? They cut corners. And the problem is because they're like, well, it's going to cost me an additional $1,000 to pull the permits, right? Or $2,000 to pull the permits. And sometimes the contractor themselves is lazy. They don't want to go through the permitting process. So they'll even downplay it, right? They're like, oh, we don't really need to pull the permits for this, just blah, 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 right? The problem is that it will bite you in the butt. If something goes wrong, a good agent on the other side is going to say, show me the permits. And if there's no permits, well, now you've got to go back and renegotiate and get it re-inspected, which costs you more time and more money. So it's like, do it right on the front end, and you're going to thank us later on the back end.
That's true. Actually, in the house that we live in now, we had one contractor that was going to do a pretty big job for us, kind of redoing a room. And he wasn't going to pull a permit. And, things happened, and we shifted to another contractor who did pull a permit. And when the inspector came at the very end, he said, it's a good thing you pulled the permit for this. Otherwise, you would not have been able to sell this house in the future where we live. Because it was significant enough where, a home inspector or title or whatever it was would have prevented us from selling our property. So definitely don't be cheap. Don't be cheap. Don't try to cut
Penny
corners.
wise, pound foolish, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So then let's go to the next F, which is flip. It means we've done our renovation, we fixed the property, we're ready to profit from it. What are some of the tools that you use with regards to being able to flip properties?
Sure. It's interesting because one of the things that we eventually just made a system, like we were like, every single one of our houses must get this done, was staging. Every single one of the properties that we flip is staged. And what we learned was that when the house is empty, it's really hard for people to imagine. This is why builders like mac out a house and they've got model homes, because what you want to do is create an experience, right? But also it detracts from all the imperfections sometimes, right? When there's nothing to look at, you're like, oh, the paint there in the corner is smudged a little bit. Like people they've got nothing to look at. So the only thing they will look at are imperfections. So what you want to do is you want to stage it, make it look really pretty, right? And be the best looking, because this is a beauty contest, essentially, when you go out on the market. You want to price it right, you want to stage it, and you want to be the obvious choice, right? And staging means, does it smell right? Does it look right? Does it feel right? What's the exterior look like? What's the interior look like? I remember early on when Mark was just getting started in this game, like he did a really good job of renovating the outside. The inside, but then the outside looked awful. It's like, hey, you forgot to do stuff on the outside, right? the outside is just as important. It helps, create that first impression. So if you're flipping something, don't forget to do the outside, renovate the house with a good contractor, make sure that you actually stage it, because I think that's really, really important, and that you get a good return on that. People see that as an expense. No, no, no. You're going to get an ROI on that money, right? And I've got documented proof of that. Like I remember trying to sell something without staging and not being able to, and thinking I need to drop it by 25,000, and then I staged it and we sold it the next day for the exact price. It cost me $2,500 a stage. I was ready to drop it $25,000, right?
Yikes, because I was going to ask
$2,500.
you, 2,500 to stage. I just say put that in your budget.
Yeah, that's just part of your budget, right?
Mhm.
Depends on the size of the property. That's how much that condo costs me to stage. But it's a great return, right? And then hire an agent that actually understands the market and understands how to create leverage. Leverage is how you win as a seller. That's it. Not complicated.
I love it. I love it. So, um, one thing that people can think about is not only flipping to an end, family of homeowners, but also to flip it to another investor.
Mhm.
So I knew a woman in Alabama, and she would buy properties that just needed 30 days worth of renovation. So all she wanted to do was some painting and flooring and things like that, nothing major. And she actually worked up here in the Pentagon, and she, Pentagon people make very good money. They're looking for real estate. She would put a tenant in the property and then flip that property to another investor.
Mhm.
So that is another great idea for anybody who's listening to this, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a homeowner. Now, if you're going to flip it to another investor, you need to have that as your strategy in the very beginning so you don't overdo the
Yeah.
renovations. You are renovating it in order to put a tenant in there. But you will find other investors that want that cash flow as well as the tax savings that they get if they earn a high income and they want to get that depreciation. So,
Yeah,
um,
Cherie, that's how Kim and I started.
mhm,
That's what we did, right?
mhm.
Like here, I'll give you the numbers, right? And this is a submarket, and you're probably going to be like, where were you buying properties for those prices, right? But I would buy something for 30,000, right? I would put in 20,000. I would sell it for 70,000, right? With a tenant in it, and then we would manage the property for them. And that might be like a duplex as an example, right? Buy a duplex that just needed love, get it fixed up in rental grade condition, not like super fancy, put tenants into it, stabilize the asset, sell it to the investor, and then manage the asset for the investor. I did that for 5 years with Kim, right?
It's great income. And the
Yeah,
truth is, for a lot of us, if we just did 3 or 4 of those a year, we could do very well. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then let's talk about refinancing. Let's say that we want to keep the property for ourselves, and we instead are going to refinance the property and do the repeat action of the burst strategy. What are some of your thoughts with regards to that? How can people actually implement that?
Um, well, first and foremost, you got to make sure that on the front end that you're getting it at a price that is a good deal, right? It's like, let's just use some basic numbers, right? Let's just say the asset value is $100,000 fixed up, right? And let's say that you're able to buy that asset for $50,000 in its current condition. Again, these are just giving you guys ideas of like how the math works. And it's going to cost you $20,000 to fix it up, right? So now you're into it for $70,000. This asset is worth $100,000, like fixed up. And because you got a good deal and you manage the renovation right, you're into it for a total of 70,000, 50, 60, yeah, $70,000, right? Now, the lender a lender is going to look at that and say, well, we'll give you leverage of 25 to 30%, right? Or we'll give you 70 on the other way. I'll look at the other way. We'll give you 70, to 75% leverage on that asset, right? I'm thinking you need the equity of 30, right? Or 35%, or even 30 or 25% equity in there, right? And they will lend you that. So if you bought it for 50 and you're into it for 70, you know that the lender will then say, you know what? Yeah, we will lend you that full amount back, and none of your money is stuck in it. And that would be the ideal situation, right? That you get all of your money back out and then you just do it again.
Right.
Now, that's not easy to do. Sometimes what might happen is you might find that maybe you went over a little on the renovation. You might find that the analysis of their valuation is slightly lower because they're being too conservative, and you're only able to get, instead of the full 30,000 back out, you're only able to get like 20,000 back out, and some of your money is stuck in there. That's okay. You still have maximum leverage on that, and as long as you have enough money to continue doing them, then you're good. You might run out of money at some point, and then you may need to bring in partners to help you with the equity portion of that, right? And so, my thoughts on it as we're going through it right now with a number of properties is interest rates have gone up quite a bit, right? They have gone up quite a bit. Seasoning for some of these is up to a year, right? To get the best rates, seasoning's up to a year. You can get funded like straight away right now without, needing the season. And seasoning meaning a track record of 12 months of rental history, right? That's what seasoning, 12-month seasoning means. You don't need that, but they're going to bump up your pricing, right? They're going to bump up the points. And so you just have to factor all of that into the analysis, right? So it has become more difficult for people to do the BRRRR strategy in today's environment because of where interest rates currently are, right? Because values haven't really come down all that much. The market is on fire beginning of this year so far, meaning there's still no inventory. So values are holding, but price of money went up. That's where strategies like subject twos really kind of come into this market, where you can potentially secure the asset at yesterday's pricing, right? Or even like VA loans or FHA loans, you have the ability to assume, right, some of those loans, but you got to go through the full qualification of that, right? So it's not like, oh, I could just take over the payments, right? Subject to, you just take over the payments.
Right.
So in every market, there's opportunity, and you got to figure out what's the opportunity of that market, right? And so that's what comes to mind when I'm thinking about the refi part of all of this, right?
Right. Well, we do, again, they'll just plug for Simply Funded. We do have access to the long-term refinancing loans as well for people. So if individuals feel like they want that, for example, I had a woman contact us yesterday who wants to buy a property. Is going to take 30 days, or no, she said 2 months to rehab it, and then they want to refinance out of that loan. Yeah, there won't be the seasoning at that point, but those loans are still out there. But if you can hold on until the seasoning happens, or get a long-term lease, your 12-month
that's right,
rental lease,
there you
then
go.
you are able, yes. So because I have another person who contacted us this morning, and they've got a lease. So yeah, so
if you have a long-term lease, then you're good.
You're
right?
good, yeah. So
ours we're going after the STRs, the short-term rentals,
short term,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
they don't want to see that short term. They want to see 12 months to get. Now, you could certainly help me with that funding. I just I'm like, okay, it's in general, it hurts my numbers because we underwrote it when interest rates were at 4%, right? And now interest rates are at 8%. You're like, ouch, that's hard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just got to figure all that stuff out on the
Yes.
front end is the point, right?
Well, I think that, the market is, there's an abundance of opportunity. And one of the big things, and circle back to the finding properties, is that there is a lot of opportunity figuring out what your strategy is and leveraging not only Simply Funded, but also with the Grid Investor Network. So I'm going to leave it on that, with you kind of giving people information about how to become a part of Grid if they don't know what that is, so they can get more resources, more education, and more access to individuals who can help them.
Sure. Grid was started, it wasn't called Grid when I started it, right? But let me tell everybody what Grid is if you don't know what it is. Gridinvestor.com is an investment network. It is a real estate investment network made up of 30 communities around the country and 25, we might be up to 30,000 people at this point in time. But it started with me in a room masterminding with investors about these things that we're talking about today. Like, hey, who do you know that can help me with this kitchen bathroom renovation? And who's a good lender? And who's somebody that can help with the property management? And right, I wanted to build a network that provided people the resources, the knowledge, and the inspiration to go out and make their financial dreams come true, right? Like, I'm an entrepreneur, and for me, it was like wealth. Wealth was, not wealth, I'm sorry, freedom, right? But wealth, created freedom for me. And that was my main driver. It's like, I want to create freedom from having to do things that I didn't want to do, right? I always say my definition is to be able to do what you want, when you want, with the people that matter most in your life, right? And for as long as you want. And that is when you start building passive income through what we're talking about today, right? Fixing and flipping is great. I always try to tell everybody, but that's a job, right? That's a job. Fixing and flipping is a job. Agent's a job. Yes, you can turn them into businesses that then work for you, right? That's hard because there's people involved in that. Oh, I just heard this car. I don't know if you heard that. Like, I just heard this car.
I didn't, but
Okay. But houses, right? Like, if you buy them right and you put the right debt on them, they do their job 24/7, 7 days a week. Don't talk back, right? Do their thing.
They don't call in sick.
They
Yes,
don't
we
call in sick.
understand.
Every now and then they need a little love, right? They need a new roof or a new HVAC. You just gotta, that's part of it. And so the network was designed to help people that are on that journey. And every month there's 30 communities currently around the country that meet monthly on a topic that helps empower the real estate entrepreneur with these things, right? We'll cover wholesaling all the way to syndicating deals, being the bank, right? And everything in between. And so I find it's probably it's been one of the most profound impacts in my life, because I get to meet so many cool people doing so many cool things. It's an incubator of real estate entrepreneurs, a business incubator of real estate entrepreneurs. And they just come into this incubator to get access to knowledge and information and tools and contracts and all the rest. So they can go to gridinvestor.com, find a community near them. Maybe if there isn't one near them, they start a community, right? We have a very specific avatar that we look for to start a community. And like I said, it's been great for us, right? Been a really good tool.
Well, I love it. And everybody, definitely gridinvestor.com if you want to network with other real estate investors. We also have our Facebook group. I'm saying we because I'm a part of it as well.
Yeah.
But we also have a Facebook group so that way you're able to network online with other real estate investors. And again, if you need some funding, we just want an opportunity to help you. If you need more education, you have questions, things like that, we want to be a resource to anybody who is watching this. Yes, sir.
There's two things that come to mind when you say that, right? This is your network, Cherie,
Mhm.
right? That's how I look at this. This is everybody's network.
Yes.
Like we built this so that people can plug into the network because we believe that the power is in the network, right? And all the relationships you have around you. So first and foremost, this is your network. Second, a great lender or a great agent, they are your business partner. You need to think of them as your business partner, and they will guide you and help you and give you advice. And so you have to get educated by your business partner, because your business partner hopefully has been playing the game and can save you time, headaches, money, right? All that stuff. So a great money partner protects you sometimes from yourself. They'll look at your deal and say, you know what? I wouldn't do this deal. This just isn't that good, right? Because a good money partner doesn't want you to get in trouble. They want you to be successful so that you could do more deals with them, right? Same thing with an agent. A good agent investor, which is what I consider myself, wants you to succeed, because if you succeed, they succeed. And then it just becomes this flywheel for both of you. You become a wealth determiner for them, and they become a wealth determiner for you. There's a symbiotic relationship that happens.
I love that. So consider me your partner, everybody who is watching this. So, Rob, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, giving us all sorts of information, tips, tricks, resources. And everybody, we're going to be doing this with all sorts of experienced rehabbers across the DMV area. So, Rob was our very first guest, but definitely want to have you come back at some point as well and give us more resources and inspiration. With
Awesome.
that, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye,
Take care.
Rob.
Bye.